The message appeared on my phone at exactly 7:32 a.m. I need a break. No contact. I read it 3 times. No mistake, no ambiguity. Every word was sharp, deliberate, and final. I set the phone down not out of shock, but to think. My mind immediately mapped every possible scenario. What this meant, potential outcomes, risks involved. Panic was irrelevant. Emotional reaction was irrelevant. Analysis and control were paramount. Her request for a break wasn't unexpected. Subtle signals had been building for weeks. Short replies, evasive behavior, avoiding plans together. Most people would have missed it or brushed it off as temporary. I hadn't. The text simply confirmed what I had already been observing. Another notification popped up. Her mum had tagged her in a public post. I opened it carefully, scanning every line, every interaction. On the surface, it looked harmless, but the implications were clear. Her personal boundaries didn't align with mine, and the exposure of this situation could affect how others viewed both of us. I made a mental note. This is now a public strategic problem. I didn't call her. I didn't send a hasty text. Reactive moves would cost me control. Instead, I opened a note and drafted a neutral, precise, calculated message. We will talk. Set a time. Clarify boundaries. Do not involve others. Every word was chosen deliberately, every line measured for effect. I sat down, observing the room around me. Everything seemed normal, yet in my mind, I was running simulations. If she wants space, how should I respond? If she intends to end it, how do I protect my dignity and interests? Every scenario played out in meticulous detail. I reflected on the past months, on our relationship. She had her moments of warmth, moments of withdrawal. Those moments of retreat were data points, subtle signals to analyze behavior. I didn't let emotion dictate my decisions. Logic did. It became clear this was no longer just a relationship problem. It was a test of boundaries, control, and respect. I took a deep breath, focusing completely. From now on, every move would be deliberate, calculated, and precise. No impulsive reactions, no emotional responses, just observation, analysis, and strategic action. I glanced at my phone again. Messages from friends popped up. Are you okay? Do you want to talk? I didn't respond. Not arrogance, but control. Every piece of information, every interaction now had to pass through the filter of logic. I stood, pacing the apartment. Each step measured, each movement deliberate. Every little detail, the way the phone buzzed, the morning light spilling into the room, the tick of the clock I observed, converting it into data. No panic, no disorientation. Everything assessed, every action pre-planned. And in that cold, quiet stillness, I understood one thing. The break she demanded wouldn't destroy me. It was only a test of control, of analysis, of strategy. I was ready. I would not let emotions cloud judgment. I would not let anyone else dictate the narrative. Every step from this point forward would be deliberate, calm, and calculated. The message appeared on my phone at exactly 7:32 a.m. I need a break. No contact. I read it 3 times. No mistake, no ambiguity. Every word was sharp, deliberate, and final. I set the phone down not out of shock, but to think. My mind immediately mapped every possible scenario. What this meant, potential outcomes, risks involved. Panic was irrelevant. Emotional reaction was irrelevant. Analysis and control were paramount. Her request for a break wasn't unexpected. Subtle signals had been building for weeks. Short replies, evasive behavior, avoiding plans together. Most people would have missed it or brushed it off as temporary. I hadn't. The text simply confirmed what I had already been observing. Another notification popped up. Her mum had tagged her in a public post. I opened it carefully, scanning every line, every interaction. On the surface, it looked harmless, but the implications were clear. Her personal boundaries didn't align with mine, and the exposure of this situation could affect how others viewed both of us. I made a mental note. This is now a public strategic problem. I didn't call her. I didn't send a hasty text. Reactive moves would cost me control. Instead, I opened a note and drafted a neutral, precise, calculated message. We will talk. Set a time. Clarify boundaries. Do not involve others. Every word was chosen deliberately, every line measured for effect. I sat down, observing the room around me. Everything seemed normal, yet in my mind, I was running simulations. If she wants space, how should I respond? If she intends to end it, how do I protect my dignity and interests? Every scenario played out in meticulous detail. I reflected on the past months, on our relationship. She had her moments of warmth, moments of withdrawal. Those moments of retreat were data points, subtle signals to analyze behavior. I didn't let emotion dictate my decisions. Logic did. It became clear this was no longer just a relationship problem. It was a test of boundaries, control, and respect. I took a deep breath, focusing completely. From now on, every move would be deliberate, calculated, and precise. No impulsive reactions, no emotional responses, just observation, analysis, and strategic action. I glanced at my phone again. Messages from friends popped up. Are you okay? Do you want to talk? I didn't respond. Not arrogance, but control. Every piece of information, every interaction now had to pass through the filter of logic. I stood, pacing the apartment. Each step measured, each movement deliberate. Every little detail, the way the phone buzzed, the morning light spilling into the room, the tick of the clock I observed, converting it into data. No panic, no disorientation. Everything assessed, every action pre-planned. And in that cold, quiet stillness, I understood one thing. The break she demanded wouldn't destroy me. It was only a test of control, of analysis, of strategy. I was ready. I would not let emotions cloud judgment. I would not let anyone else dictate the narrative. Every step from this point forward would be deliberate, calm, and calculated. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I was panicked, but because my mind was running through calculations. Every detail of our relationship, every conversation, every shared plan, every minor disagreement was being analyzed. Patterns emerged. Her tendency to withdraw when stressed, the precise timing of her off moods, even the way she framed certain requests. All of it was data. I remembered the morning she first hinted at needing space. Most people would have treated it like a passing remark, a casual request. I didn't. I catalogued it mentally, compared it to similar moments, noted the escalation. The current text wasn't a shock, it was a consequence, predictable if you looked closely. By mid-morning, I began mapping out the possible outcomes. There were 3 main scenarios. Temporary break, she wants space to reflect, and the relationship survives if I maintain composure. Permanent break, she intends to end things, and I need to protect my dignity and manage public perception. Manipulation, testing boundaries. She is gauging my response, possibly involving her family to measure loyalty, reaction, or control. Each scenario demanded a different strategic response. I listed the pros and cons of each, the actions required, the potential fallout, and the necessary timing. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was calculating. Then I considered the social dynamics. Her mum's post wasn't accidental. It was a signal, subtle but deliberate, that her family was involved and that public perception was a factor. Any move I made would now have ramifications beyond just us. Control of narrative was essential. I needed to determine when, how, and where to respond without letting external observers dictate the story. I drafted multiple versions of messages in my notes, neutral, firm, analytical, and unambiguous. Each version had contingencies: if she replied immediately, if she ignored it, if her mother intervened. Every potential response from her, every reaction from her social circle was accounted for. This was not paranoia, it was preparation. I paced the apartment, reviewing past interactions. I remembered small details, the tone of her laughter, the way she sometimes hesitated before agreeing to plans, the specific words she chose when talking about future commitments. Each nuance was a clue, each behavior a pattern. By tracking these, I could anticipate her likely moves, predict responses, and maintain strategic advantage. By afternoon, I had a clear plan. I would not engage impulsively. I would maintain calm, project control, and let the situation unfold while I observed. Any interaction would be deliberate, precise, and aligned with my objectives. Clarity, boundaries, and self-respect. I allowed myself a small acknowledgement of frustration brief, internal but immediately dismissed it. Emotions were irrelevant. Only actions mattered. I knew that staying too reactive or too emotional would shift the power away from me. As the evening approached, I reviewed all my mental notes again, rehearsing potential conversations, choosing words carefully in my mind. Every possibility, every contingency, every angle had been calculated. The break she demanded was not a threat. It was a test, and I intended to pass it not with sentiment, but with strategy. I woke up early the next morning, as usual. The apartment was silent, sunlight spilling softly through the blinds, but in my mind, every possibility was being measured. Her requested break was still there, but I didn't panic. Today, every interaction had to be calculated, every move precise. I opened my phone, reviewing old messages, scanning through the comments and posts her mother had tagged her in. One detail stood out. The public post wasn't accidental. It was both a message and a test, designed to gauge my reaction, my patience, and my level of control. I sat down and made a mental checklist. Every possible action from her had been mapped. If she replied directly, I would remain calm, measured, asking questions to clarify boundaries without rushing. If she stayed silent, I wouldn't bombard her with messages. Instead, I would observe, record response times, and note patterns. If her family or friends intervened, I would remain polite and neutral, never drawn into public drama. While maintaining control of the narrative, every possibility was calculated, every reaction predicted. Emotions were irrelevant, they were just data points, used to evaluate impact and adjust strategy. Breakfast passed quietly. I sipped coffee, observing the apartment and thinking. I remembered previous moments when she withdrew, small signals I had once ignored. Now I looked at them differently. All data, all clues to anticipate the next move. By noon, a small notification popped up. She had commented on a friend's post. At first glance, it seemed casual, but the choice of words hinted at fluctuating moods. I made a mental note. This was an opportunity to observe, not intervene. A careless response now could cost control. All afternoon, I continued observing, analyzing, and running simulations. Every detail, word choice, response, timing, indirect interference from others was logged in my mind. I didn't rush to contact her. I let time do its work, letting the data speak. I reviewed old messages again, noting changes in her tone and phrasing. A pattern emerged. She often used distance as a test, while leaving small traces of care. I immediately adjusted my strategy. Maintain enough distance so she didn't feel controlled, but still observe and retain the upper hand. By evening, I stood in front of the mirror, looking myself in the eyes. I reminded myself, stay calm, observe, control. No emotional reactions. Every move must be strategic. Her requested break wasn't a threat, was a test of observation, analysis, and control. I would navigate it, step by step, cold, deliberate, never letting emotion cloud judgment. I took a deep breath, fully focused. In my mind, every scenario was clear, every action pre-planned. This was now a strategic game, and I was playing it with complete composure. No panic, no sentiment, just logic and calculation. The next day, the apartment remained quiet, but my mind was taut like a string. Her requested break was still in place, and now I realized that every action I took would directly impact the course of our relationship. I no longer had the luxury to react impulsively. Every move had to be strategic. Around midday, I received a message from her. Just a short line. We need to talk sometime. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I analyzed every word. Need to talk could signal the start of an argument or a calm discussion. I calculated the timing of my response to show willingness while maintaining control, while waiting for the next response. I sat down and made mental notes. I mapped out every possibility. If she wanted to return to normal, I would remain cold and measured, asking questions to establish new boundaries without letting emotions dictate my tone. If she intended to continue the distance or end things, I wouldn't react emotionally. I would focus on preserving dignity and recording every detail for later steps. If family or friends intervened, I would remain neutral, avoiding public drama, while still keeping control of the narrative. I remembered the past months every time she tested me by withdrawing or avoiding me. Each time, I remained calm and observant, and now I applied the same strategy. Control by observation, act with calculation by afternoon. Another notification appeared. Her mother tagged her in a post again. At first glance, it seemed harmless, but the phrasing and context indicated she was measuring my response. I reminded myself, this is not the time to be angry or impulsive. Every reaction must be calculated. I sat down, reviewing old messages and comments. Every small detailed punctuation, emphasis, timing was data. I began creating a behavior map, frequency, pacing, mood hidden behind every word. This was no longer just a relationship. It was a strategic game. As evening approached, I decided to send a concise, purposeful message. We'll talk tonight at 8. Just you and me. No one else? Every word was deliberate, demonstrating seriousness while maintaining control. After sending it, I didn't add more, didn't dwell. I sat quietly, observing the apartment, noting every small detail: light, clock ticking, distant sounds from the street. Everything became data, every detail analyzed. I paced the room, consciously aware of each step. Every movement, every reflex, was recorded mentally as part of the overall strategy. I noted my breathing, heart rate, and how I maintained composure in preparation for the evening before going to bed. I looked into the mirror and took a deep breath, reminding myself every action must be strategic. No emotional reactions, always observe and control. This was the biggest test yet, and I was prepared to face it step by step, coldly but deliberately. In my mind, I ran through scenarios for the evening, which questions to ask first, possible reactions, how to navigate changes in her tone, and how to maintain control if anyone else intervened. Every step meticulously planned. I knew that her requested break was not a threat. It was a test of observation, calculation, and control over the situation. I closed my eyes for a moment, fully focused. In the silence, I felt the power of composure. No panic, no haste, just logic and strategy. I knew that tomorrow everything would come to a decisive point, and I was ready. That evening, I prepared everything meticulously. At 7:45 p.m., I sat quietly in the living room, soft light spilling from the desk lamp, leaving no detail overlooked. In my mind, every scenario was mapped: questions, potential answers, how to navigate if her tone shifted, contingency plans if anyone else showed up. Every move was calculated. She entered, slightly tense, but maintaining a composed exterior. I stood, slowly, locking eyes with her. No words were spoken initially. I let the silence hang for a few seconds, observing every tiny reaction, her breathing, eye movement, posture. Every detail was data. She spoke first, voice slightly shaky. "I think I need space." I nodded lightly, remaining calm. "I understand. We'll talk tonight. Just the two of us, no one else." Simple words, but each one carefully chosen to maintain control and signal seriousness. The conversation unfolded quickly, escalating into sensitive topics, suppressed emotions, doubts, unresolved conflicts. I didn't react emotionally. I listened, analyzing every word, intonation, and subtle shift in voice. Every response was deliberately chosen, keeping composure while establishing clear boundaries. At one point, she paused, eyes glistening. "Do you think I'm being selfish?" I took a deep breath, voice even. "No. I just want us to understand each other better. Every action needs clarity, and I want to maintain control so neither of us gets hurt." I continued observing every small detail. The way she shrugged, glanced around the room, held her cup of water. Seemingly minor actions were clues for predicting her next move. She began revealing hidden fears and worries, but interspersed with testing statements. "I don't know if you still love me like before." I responded calmly and strategically. "I do, but love doesn't mean losing control. We need to understand each other and respect boundaries." After a while, she fell silent, taking a few steps back. I stayed still, neither advancing nor retreating. The distance was part of my strategy, not to make her feel controlled, yet keeping the initiative. I observed every micro-movement, head tilt, downward gaze, fleeting hesitation before speaking again. The dialogue stretched for hours, every word weighed carefully. I listened, but didn't let emotions interfere. I collected data, analyzed, and responded strategically. Every conflict, doubt, and fear she expressed was handled with absolute composure by the end. There was no yelling, no explosive argument, just tense calm. I had retained control, observing and guiding each step. We left the room with reduced tension, but the data in my mind was fuller and more detailed than ever. Before bed, I looked into the mirror, took a deep breath, reminding myself, the climax isn't over. Every next step must be strategic, every detail observed. This is a battle of minds, not emotions. I was ready for whatever came next. Lying in bed, my mind ran countless scenarios. If her tone changed, if she made an unexpected decision, if anyone else intervened. Every detail measured, analyzed, and ready to respond. Calmness was my power, and I knew control was the only thing keeping this relationship from descending into chaos. The next day, outwardly, everything in the apartment seemed normal, but the atmosphere had shifted completely. After the face-to-face confrontation the night before, I realized the relationship had entered a new phase, no longer just a love story, but a prolonged strategic battle where every action carried long-term consequences. I began observing every minor detail in daily life, the way she walked, her gestures, her breathing, how she replied to messages, even fleeting glances were recorded. Every detail became data, every action a clue to predict the next move. The distance she had requested previously had become a constant challenge. I no longer had the luxury of relying on emotion or quick judgment. Every reaction had to be meticulously calculated. I mapped out my responses in my head. If she maintained distance, I would remain calm, observe, and record, without letting emotions interfere. If she initiated closeness, I would retain control, guiding each interaction step by step. If any family member or friend intervened, I would remain neutral, prevent drama from spreading, while collecting all details for long-term strategy. The day passed slowly but tensely. I continuously analyzed every expression, gesture, and glance. Control was still in my hands, but now it was a long-term strategic game, where every move affected the future. That evening, when she returned, I observed every detail, how she held her belongings, her steps, the way her eyes scanned the room. All these subtle signals revealed her mood and hinted at her next moves. I recorded every word, every look, every nuance. Everything was data to process. We sat down for dinner in silence, speaking minimally. I maintained a calm tone, observing and taking notes. Every question, every reaction, I analyzed carefully. I realized that maintaining composure at this point was crucial. It formed the foundation for controlling all future developments. In my mind, all possible scenarios were already mapped. If her tone changed, if she made an unexpected decision, if anyone else intervened, every detail measured, analyzed, and ready to respond. Calmness was my power, and control was the only thing keeping this relationship from descending into chaos before going to bed. I looked into the mirror, took a deep breath, and reminded myself, every action from now on carries long-term impact. Every decision must be calculated meticulously. This is not just about love, but a highly sophisticated strategic game. I inhaled deeply, focusing, ready for whatever came next. The consequences of the previous night were not just temporary emotional calm. They were a turning point where both of us had to adjust behavior, adapt to each other's control, and realize that every subsequent step would be observed, evaluated, and calculated. Everything now pointed to who would hold long-term control, and I knew I had to maintain my strategy to preserve authority and composure. I vividly remembered the moments when she spoke with worry mixed with challenge, her eyes briefly sad, her voice trembling but restrained. Every subtle detail was recorded, each heartbeat, each moment of hesitation, each unconscious gesture. This data would be key to predicting behavior and guiding future steps. That night, I closed my eyes, but in my mind, everything continued to play out. Scenarios, potential reactions, opportunities, and risks. Everything was calculated to the last detail, and I felt absolute control still lay in my hands. I knew the final climax was not yet here, but I was perfectly prepared to face it step by step, detail by detail, coldly and strategically. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The space was quiet, soft morning light filtering through the blinds. Yet in my mind, every plan and scenario from the previous night continued to run. The confrontation had changed everything, and I knew today would be decisive. Who would hold control in this relationship? She entered the room, eyes hesitant but trying to maintain composure. I stood still, observing every movement. Her breathing, the way she walked, unconscious gestures like biting her lip or glancing at her phone. Every detail was valuable data. She spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I'm still worried about everything. I replied calmly but firmly. I understand, but we need to be honest. No drama, no hiding. Only truth and carefully considered decisions. The conversation escalated, this time reaching the true climax. She posed challenging questions. Do you still love me? Are you willing to take responsibility for all the consequences if we can't align? I did not let emotions sway me. I analyzed every word, every pause, every nuance. I answered strategically, acknowledging feelings while maintaining control. I love you, but love doesn't mean losing control. I will take responsibility, but every decision needs clarity and respect for boundaries. In the following minutes, she continued testing me with subtle remarks, interspersed with tense silences. I observed everything. Her eyes, heartbeat, unconscious gestures. Every detail was analyzed, and every reaction I gave was pre-calculated to guide the conversation in the direction I wanted. At the climax, she broke down, tears falling, voice full of anguish. I don't know where we're going. I remained calm, choosing every word carefully. We will go to a place where we truly understand each other. Every challenge, every emotion will be acknowledged, and I will maintain control so no one gets hurt further. In that moment, it wasn't just words, it was the power of composure and strategy. I had navigated the climax, retained control, and simultaneously made her realize that every action of hers was observed, and she could not manipulate or overpower me. That evening, when everything ended, we sat together, still tense, but with a new understanding of each other. She was silent, eyes reflecting a sense of calm, and I knew that my strategy, patience, and meticulous observation had paid off. Before going to bed, I looked into the mirror, took a deep breath, and reminded myself, the emotional battle is over, but the strategic game continues. I have control, but I must remain vigilant for every future step. The story didn't conclude with yelling or explosive drama, but with absolute composure, sophisticated strategy, and control still firmly in my hands and in my mind. One thing was certain: every challenge in the future, every hidden conflict or potential drama, I would observe, calculate, and handle calmly, step by step, detail by detail, exactly according to the strategy I had laid out from the start.